Mexico is on the rise, and what Washington believed it had under control has become an unexpected challenge. Mexican growth is not just an economic issue, but the greatest concern that the United States has faced in many years. Every factory, every investment, and every trade agreement in Mexico challenges American dominance. Today, I will show you with data why this progress represents a real threat to Washington. What once seemed predictable and controllable is now strong, competitive, and unpredictable. Every economic move by Mexico, every investment and industrial development silently shakes American power. This is not just about politics or trade, but about industrial and technological power that is increasingly approaching the United States. Every automotive or technology plant in Mexico is not just a local contribution, but a direct challenge to American industrial superiority. For years, Washington saw Mexico as a place to establish factories with cheap labor without fearing the loss of its manufacturing leadership position. But now, the situation has changed. Mexico not only produces more, but does so efficiently, innovatively, and competitively, reducing the historical American advantage in key sectors. This worries Washington because a close neighbor has stopped copying models and now creates its own alternatives that compete directly. A clear example is the Mexican automotive industry. What was once marginal is today a center of excellence, with international brands choosing Mexico for its costs, infrastructure, and access to agreements like USMCA. Every vehicle produced is a step toward Mexico's industrial independence. Washington sees how these decisions displace parts of its traditional production and shake the perception of control it maintained for decades. But the threat goes beyond the automotive sector. Mexico's technology industry grows with high-precision electronic component factories, research centers, and startups that innovate rapidly. This means Mexico no longer depends only on foreign technology, but develops its own technological base. For Washington, this represents a profound change. They now face a Mexico that designs, produces, and exports advanced technology. Every plant, every foreign investment creates jobs and strengthens Mexico's internal market. The formation of a specialized workforce allows Mexico to maintain its growth autonomously, without depending on the United States. While Washington fears losing influence, Mexico positions itself as an autonomous actor that competes with the United States in efficiency and productivity, even surpassing them. The strengthening of Mexican industry has significant geopolitical implications. By increasing its own production, Mexico gains autonomy in trade negotiations and offers options to companies that could previously only operate under American influence. This positions the country as an independent and difficult-to-control partner. For the United States, every new factory in Mexico symbolizes a loss of influence and a challenge to its industrial supremacy on the continent. The continuous arrival of foreign investments not only drives Mexico from the outside, but improves its capacity to make its own decisions. While Mexico strengthens its internal economy, Washington recognizes that its traditional control begins to fade. What once seemed like an easy-to-manage ally is today a country with strategic autonomy and the capacity to determine its own economic course. Mexico has implemented important reforms that increase its resistance and productivity, limiting the possibilities of American manipulation. Fiscal modernization was key, allowing more efficient tax collection and combating tax evasion, while intelligently fostering local and foreign investments. The United States observes how these transformations create a more independent economy, less exposed to external pressures. Also, in the energy sector, Mexico has achieved advances. The modernization of the oil sector and the promotion of renewable energy increase national production and reduce dependence on external supplies. Thus, Mexico can make energy decisions that benefit its economy without being exposed to American pressures. Labor reforms complement this process, improving conditions and fostering productivity. While Mexico consolidates its internal policy, It positions itself as an actor difficult to pressure from the outside. Its decision-making capacity is no longer subordinated to Washington or to unilaterally imposed agreements. Every national policy strengthens its negotiating position on equal terms. USMCA reflects this evolution, as Mexico actively participates and defends its interests in areas such as digital commerce, intellectual property, and labor conditions. This new attitude also influences global perception, as multinational companies see Mexico as a destination with competitive conditions, clear rules, and stability, making it an attractive alternative to the United States. Negotiating autonomy allows Mexico to protect key sectors, attract investments, and create jobs without depending on American approval. Energy autonomy has become a fundamental pillar that strengthens Mexico's power and directly challenges American interests in the region. Mexico has taken important measures to consolidate its energy independence. The modernization of the oil sector has allowed Mexico to increase its production and optimize its refineries, reducing the need to import fuels. In parallel, investment in renewable energy such as solar and wind diversifies the energy matrix. Every completed energy project brings Mexico closer to a model where it can maintain its industry, its exports, and its internal growth without depending on the United States. This change shifts the balance of power and shows that a country that controls its energy has the freedom to determine its economic and political course. Technological innovation generates more concerns in Washington. Mexican startups, research centers, and technology companies drive innovations, reduce dependence on the United States, and create real and strategic competition. Washington observes how Mexico develops software, applications, and industrial systems that were previously exclusive to the United States. Digitalization in key sectors such as banking, automotive industry, and commerce positions Mexico as a global actor that can operate without American intermediaries. This technological ecosystem also fosters education and talent development. Mexican universities and institutes train specialized professionals who drive innovations and create their own solutions, strengthening the local workforce and stemming the brain drain to the United States. The retention of capital in the country further strengthens this independence. Every peso invested and retained in Mexico energizes the local economy and limits Washington's capacity to influence financial decisions in its favor. Capital retention is achieved through intelligent measures, tax incentives for reinvestments, support for local companies, strengthening of the financial system, and promotion of strategic sectors. The internal market is the core of this new independence. A growing middle class with greater purchasing power, access to education, technology, and formal employment, which allows Mexico to consume more of its own production. Every peso spent locally strengthens productive chains, fosters service investments, and creates jobs. This worries Washington because it no longer counts only how much Mexico produces, but now consumes more internally. Mexico is no longer just a commercial partner, but a geopolitical actor with growing independence. Its economic development gives it the capacity to make its own diplomatic decisions, form strategic alliances, and extend its influence beyond its borders. Washington observes with concern how a country that once seemed predictable now defines its own international agenda, negotiating directly with China, Europe, and other Latin American countries. The country's growth is sustained by a highly specialized workforce composed of professionals, technicians, and entrepreneurs who excel in manufacturing, technology, engineering, and strategic services. Every engineer or programmer trained in Mexico represents not only knowledge, but also economic and strategic power that previously emigrated north. This specialization allows Mexico to create innovative and high-quality products and services that can compete globally. Universities, technical institutes, and training programs work closely with industry so that every professional can integrate directly into key sectors. Every graduate entering the job market strengthens productive chains, fosters innovation, and improves internal efficiency. Mexico no longer looks only north. Its commercial, financial, and strategic connections diversify toward Europe and other emerging markets. Every new connection outside the United States means independence and power. Agreements with China, investments in Germany, alliances with Brazil, or logistical agreements with Japan not only generate income but open paths that Washington cannot block with economic pressure or commercial threats. This international diversification weakens American influence and places Mexico in a position of unprecedented autonomy. Mexico demonstrates that it can grow, attract investments, and consolidate its industry without depending on the United States. This strategy also impacts logistics and supply chains. Mexico offers alternative routes, strategic ports, and agreements that allow operation outside the American zone of influence. Mexico's industrial consolidation not only strengthens the national economy but redefines global supply chains. Mexico has developed logistical and productive options that were previously concentrated exclusively in the United States. Every port, every industrial plant, and every international connection creates independent routes for multinational companies. Mexico can now produce, transport, and export without depending on American infrastructures or decisions. This autonomy in supply chains has immediate strategic consequences, as Washington loses the capacity to impose conditions or manipulate trade according to its own interests. By diversifying its routes and maintaining productive flows without dependence on the North, Mexico consolidates its position as an independent regional actor. After decades of dependence and following imposed rules, Mexico emerges as an actor that redefines the balance of power in North America. What seemed immovable to Washington today wavers before a strong, competitive, and autonomous Mexico. Mexico's growth is not only economic but also strategic and political. Mexico has built internal autonomy, international diversification, energy, independence, and a competitive market that allows it to project power and determine its own path. This change alters the regional balance of power. A neighbor that once obeyed now dictates its own rules. Every Mexican advance sends a clear message: American supremacy is no longer absolute. Mexico's capacity to negotiate on equal terms, attract investments, innovate technologically, and strengthen its productive chains makes it a solid country that can resist external pressures. Washington faces a new reality: an independent Mexico that does not depend on its approval and projects influence beyond its borders. Mexico's internal development and external projection generate an effect that amplifies its power. Specialized professionals, competitive industry, technological innovation, and energy autonomy combine in a country that can maintain its growth and protect its interests. Mexico is no longer a subordinate partner, but a competitor with decision-making capacity and real strength. In summary, Mexico redefines the balance of power by becoming an autonomous, competitive, and strategic country in its region. Washington can no longer simply impose its rules or control the markets it once dominated. Mexico has awakened, and what Washington believed controlled is now a force that writes history.